how to invest in your 20s to be wealthy in your 30s, and I'll be helping you do this by covering 3 types of investments you should consider if you want to grow your wealth over the next 5 to 10 years. And I'll start by telling you this. Right now, the US government is printing so much money, you will need some different investments as a hedge to inflation. Just in 2020 alone, the US government printed almost 1/5 of all US dollars in existence. Now, you may have already noticed this affecting home prices and even the price of your groceries. So I'm telling you, you will need to be doing something to stay ahead of this. And picking the right investments will be crucial in protecting your wealth. And hopefully, they will still allow you to retire a bit early. And listen, I don't mean to be preaching doom and gloom. That's not what my channel is about. I still think there's a lot of opportunity for you to build lasting wealth. But we need to be realistic with the economic environment we are in if we are to get there. So the big question is, even with everything that's going on, where should you be investing your money to stay ahead of the game? Well, the best places to start are usually where wealthy people are already putting their money. And one of the absolute biggest places wealthy people are putting their money right now is in the cryptocurrencies and crypto projects. I'm going to give you guys a couple statistics because I love statistics. 47% of millennial millionaires have at least 25% of their wealth in crypto. What's even more impressive is that almost 35% of those millennial millionaires have more than half of their money invested in crypto assets. I'm a big believer that if you want to be wealthy, you need to do what the wealthy are already doing. And living down here in Puerto Rico, I meet a lot of these crypto millionaires. Now, this may surprise you, but a lot of them actually led very average lives and made average income before they got into crypto. And within just a few years of well-placed crypto investing, they've now retired with assets valued higher than what most people accumulate who have worked their entire lives. I get that you might be hesitant to buy into crypto assets. There's a lot of volatility in the space, and you should be hesitant to invest in something you don't understand well. But I'm telling you, it is worth your time learning about it. Now, I don't consider myself some crypto guru. I'm pretty new to the space, but I've put in a significant amount of time learning it in depth over this last year. And I've been fortunate to have some really smart people to learn from myself. One in particular, named Crypto Rain, has his own YouTube channel and really does give excellent coverage on new projects and market analysis. Obviously, he didn't pay me for that plug. He's just a friend, and I really want you guys, my audience, to get the best information possible from lots of sources if you're wanting to invest in crypto. And Crypto Rain really is one of those. Now, here's another statistic you need to consider when you think about buying cryptocurrencies. There will never be enough Bitcoin for every millionaire on earth to own one full Bitcoin. Okay, that's something that's important for you to understand. There's a limited supply of Bitcoin that will ever exist. Now, we know that there are probably around 150 million people on the planet that own some Bitcoin, and 46 million of those are people here in the USA. On top of that, El Salvador has made Bitcoin a legal tender. And you're probably wondering, Brian, why is that significant? Well, internationally, do we give value to the Australian dollar? Of course we do. But there's only around 24 million people that even use the Australian dollar as a currency. Think about that. There's roughly 5 times as many holders of Bitcoin compared to the Australian dollar, and they are not a small country. In fact, there's only a handful of countries with over 150 million people. Now, I know some people may have some Australian dollars tucked away in an old college travel backpack, but the comparison isn't meant to be exact. It's to show that we likely surpassed the ability for governments to regulate Bitcoin out of existence a long time ago, in my opinion. China tried to get rid of it, and guess what? The miners simply moved to more friendly jurisdictions and diversified where they were mining. A lot of people in the crypto space actually feel this was good for Bitcoin because now China has less influence over the cryptocurrency. And you think that all the hedge funds and corporations in the US that now own billions of the asset are going to allow the US to simply get rid of it? Now, I'm not saying it isn't possible, but I am saying it is much less likely than even a year ago. There's so much wealth tied to it now that I consider it a much safer investment. Now that I shared my opinion about cryptocurrencies, let's talk about where you should start. Well, most people can easily start by buying what's called blue chip cryptocurrencies. These are the coins with the highest market cap that tend to be the most stable. Some of these include Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Polkadot, and Solana. You can often buy some of these through your investment brokerage, but one of the easiest places to set up an account and buy these is through Coinbase. I'll later be doing a video on good exchanges for buying crypto. But honestly, if you haven't taken crypto seriously yet, maybe take a peek at the playbook of the young millionaires and ask yourself why most of them are investing so much of their wealth into crypto. Just keep in mind that we are in a crypto bull run, so we may later get a big pullback this next year. I treat this like a long-term investment. I dollar cost average in. When I feel like this bull run has matured, I'll start taking some profits, but long-term, I'll be dollar cost averaging into crypto. Now, let's move on to the next type of investment for becoming wealthy over the next 5 to 10 years. But if you haven't yet, smash that like button. I only ever ask you to hit that like button after I've already given you some value. And for smashing that like button, at the end of this, I'll be sharing one of the most stable investments that has a tendency of beating most investors. The next investment you really need to consider is buying a home. There's an age-old saying, the best time to buy a home is 5 years ago, and the second best time to buy a house is right now. Really, owning real estate is one of the best hedges against inflation because you're leveraging borrowed money. The home value will generally go up with inflation, giving you the returns on the inflation of the borrowed money. And inflation always makes your debt comparatively cheaper. I see a lot of people holding out till they can afford their dream home, and I personally think that's a big mistake. In my opinion, most people should buy the best home they can afford in the best area possible and start building equity. Even if it's not your dream house, get into an area that has potential for future job growth and gentrification. And I'll say this, the people that talk negatively about gentrification are the ones that decided to rent instead of buying. Gentrification is inevitable in some areas, so you need to learn how to play the system, right? We are all adults here. Life isn't fair. It's about figuring out how to work the system, and I'm telling you, lots of very average people build wealth in real estate. Now, home prices have really hit some insane levels recently. The median household income can't even afford a median priced house. So that's why I'm saying most of you will have to start with something that likely isn't your dream house. But also consider different methods for buying a home other than getting on Zillow. You're unlikely to get a deal by finding it on MLS right now. It may be worth it to purchase a course on how to find houses for wholesaling just to get into your first home. Find that old lady that's a hoarder in your neighborhood and offer to buy her house without her needing to clean it out. Even tell her you'll move all her stuff to her new place. Think outside the box and you can buy a house with some equity in it, even in this market. I want you to look at all the older retired couples you know. Compare those that own properties versus those that don't. I always tell my friends every elderly couple I know that owns 3 or more properties usually has a pretty comfortable retirement. Now, just remember, everything I'm sharing here is just my own opinion. These are just some investment strategies I try to incorporate into my own life. Really, you need to research and really figure out what's going to work for you. Now, let's move on to the third type of investment you should consider for building wealth, and those are index funds. Investing in index funds is one of the easiest ways to grow your money, and it has one of the lowest barriers of entry. And you might be wondering why I mention investing in index funds over individual stocks. Well, it's because index funds generally outperform the majority of actively managed funds and individual investors. Yes, some investors do outperform the stock market, and many of those investors are looking at their stock portfolio and markets multiple times a day. If that's your thing, you just simply love trading stocks and following it all day, every day, then maybe trading stocks is for you. But I have to say, for the majority of people, they should consider keeping a large portion of their investment portfolio in index funds. There are more than one index fund, so you're probably wondering which ones are my favorite. Well, almost everyone has heard of the S&P 500 index, but surprisingly, people are not as familiar with the NASDAQ 100 index. The NASDAQ 100 index has actually outperformed the S&P 500 for over the last 10 years, and by quite a bit. In fact, it's even grown over 550% in just the last 10 years. This is largely because the NASDAQ 100 focuses on some of the fastest growing sectors like technology, consumer services, and healthcare. If you're wondering what's a good ticker symbol for buying the NASDAQ 100, you can consider QQQM. The S&P 500 index is a good one as well. That does outperform most managed funds and investors. And I do think it's important to stay well diversified, so you may want to consider buying this one as well. A good option for this is the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF under ticker symbol VOO. I'll also say this. Between these two index funds, you are already very well diversified. You don't need a half dozen index funds for diversification, and I personally don't see a reason to buy a bunch if the others don't perform as well. Beyond the index funds, you can always consider putting some money into a few specific companies you've researched in depth and you really think they have the potential of doing well in the next 5 to 10 years. So just as a recap, we covered investing in blue chip cryptocurrencies, real estate, and index funds. I think the three of these are simple enough that pretty much anyone out there can do it with an acceptable amount of risk. Just be mindful that the worst place to be keeping your money right now is in cash in a bank account. It's losing value sitting there. So make some smart investments and get your money working for you. Remember to smash that like button. Just as promised, I told you two of the best performing investments over the last 10 years. I also told you where young millionaires are stuffing their money. If you haven't yet, become an OG and click subscribe. And you guys have a great day.